Good evening, RDs to be. Welcome to RD Exam Ready Live. I'm Zach Caseberg. I'm your tutor, your coach, your guide along the path to passing the RD exam. And if you're joining us tonight, it means that you want to learn more about the RD exam and you want to join us a little bit to do some practice questions, which is going to be our main goal for tonight. We are going to have a live that's just focused on practice questions tonight, which is one of my favorite things to really talk about because I feel as though practice questions are the thing that transfers the most towards your success on exam day. So, any moment that I can take time with practice questions to sit with students and talk through practice questions, it's always really beneficial. This session is kind of out here just to give you a free lesson, to give you some chances to really just continue working on your practice question strategy. So we're going to dive in here very quickly, but I just wanted to kind of go through some ground rules a little bit and make sure you're getting the most use out of this session tonight. So as we're doing practice questions this evening, remember that practice questions are just that. They are practice, and that's what they're meant to be. So they're not meant to make you feel like you're not doing well. They're not meant to be out there to say, oh, I don't know this. It's more of a way to say, hey, how's my strategy? How am I working through things? And what am I getting caught up on? As we do practice questions tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a practice question right there in front of you. And I'm going to pull that practice question up for you. And I'm going to give you about 30, 45 seconds on your own to start working through that question. And then at that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to then jump in and talk through how I would go through answering the practice question and talk through how we get to our best answer here. So that's going to be our plan for tonight. I wrote up about 10 questions. We'll see how many we get to, as we know some of these questions can get a little bit long, but not as long as I can be at sometimes here. Make sure you use the chat function to communicate with me if you are confused or if you do have questions about things. I really love it when students will post their answer into the chat as well. So if you feel up to that and you feel like you want to put yourself out there, drop that answer into the chat of what you feel is your best answer. Or if you want to hold on to it, just speak it into the ether. Make sure it's said somewhere along the way, and that'll be a helpful way to kind of go through that as well. So we're going to dive in, get into our questions here tonight. I'm going to be really looking at the chat just to make sure that I can see all of you and make sure that I'm getting your answers nice and addressed as we go through stuff as well. Good. See the chat. Cool. I was just posting something in the YouTube chat there for all of you. So make sure you're joining us on YouTube, of course, as many of you are. But I want to make sure that I can see the chat and I can see all of your answers. Awesome. Hey, Laura. Hey, Alyssa. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here. Hey, Holly. Awesome to have all of you in here. Okay, scratch paper, calculator, your brain nice and handy, maybe some caffeine like I have ready to go here. And let's dive in to our questions tonight. Give me a moment just to get set up here, and we will dive right on in. Cool. Just before we kind of dive into our questions tonight, just a couple reminders. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe. Check out the podcast if you haven't. I love giving you all free content and free resources to make sure you kind of know how to do that. I don't want to make you all pay for extra stuff. That's not what my goal is. It's more to say, hey, how can I offer and help all these students along their study process? So if you would just contribute back and join that if you don't mind. And then one other note I'm going to make, and I'll post this in the chat too, is if you do want a PDF of this session, if you do want the notes afterward, then make sure you do join that mailing list. I know a lot of you have already done that. So if you haven't, check out that mailing list that I'm going to post in the chat here in a little bit, or I'll put it in the description. And that way you can get a PDF of the practice questions that we did, so you can do some more practice yourself and add it to your list and notes here. Okay, excellent. So 30, 45 seconds. We're going to start out with this first question here. I'm going to read it out to you, and then I'm going to give you that 30 to 45 seconds here. A patient with congestive heart failure using diuretics should be evaluated for deficiencies in A, vitamin D, and calcium, B, thiamine, magnesium, and potassium, C, sodium, vitamin D, and thiamine, or D, vitamin K, riboflavin, and B6. Go ahead and take 30 to 45 seconds to start that on your own, and then I'm going to jump in with you. Okay, I see lots of answers rolling into the chat here. Looking good. Look like we have everyone really open and willing tonight just to kind of toss those answers in there. I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds to kind of work through here. Excellent, excellent. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and say, if I'm here on exam day, here's how I would go about approaching this question. So again, I'm making sure that I've read the question carefully and that I understand a lot of the answers in there. So I read through the question. I go, patient with congestive heart failure using diuretics should be evaluated for deficiencies in what? So, that being said, as I think about that a little bit, I'm going to use my process of elimination A, B, C, and D to tell me which answers I want to get rid of, hold on to, or ones that I'm just kind of questionable on. If I'm just questionable on it, that's okay. You don't have to remove it, but it kind of helps you in a way to say, all right, maybe I want to keep this in the running and maybe I don't. So, starting with answer A, vitamin D, and calcium. Well, when I think about diuretics, what I really think about a lot of the time is thinking about the fact that we usually would think of water soluble vitamins and water based stuff when it comes with diuretics because diuretics make us pee, right? They make us urinate. So it makes a lot of natural sense as to why we'd look at more water soluble things when it comes to this. So, that being said, with vitamin A and vitamin D, I want to rule that one out here first. I don't think that one's going to be a good fit just because I don't think the fat soluble vitamins are going to be what I lose in this case. Question answer B is going to be thiamine, magnesium, and potassium. Hmm. I think this is a good answer. I'd like to put a check mark on it. We know thiamine losses are very common when it comes to diuretics, and we think about a lot of those water solubles there too. So I think that's going to be a good fit, and I just at least want to hold on to it. But we have to read through every answer already to be. So make sure you don't just jump to one answer. Make sure you see all those options there. C is sodium, vitamin D, and thiamine. Okay, I'm just going to put a little question mark by that one. I don't hate it, I don't love it. And then answer D, vitamin K, riboflavin, and B6. Hmm. Well, the riboflavin and the vitamin B6, those being water soluble, maybe I would include that there. But the vitamin K, being a fat soluble vitamin, would make me say, hey, that's probably not going to be our best fit. So I'm going to rule that out. Now I'm at a 50-50 shot between these two answers. So 50-50 odds if I had to just do a blind guess here, I have a 50% chance of getting it right, which is this is a great spot when it comes to that. But I need to choose what I think my best answer is. And I agree with many of you. I would say our best answer is going to be answer B as in boy for my best fit here. So now let's talk through a bit of our solutions here. B was our best answer. A patient with CHF using diuretics would be recommended to go ahead and focus on getting and being evaluated for deficiencies in thiamine, magnesium, and potassium here. Now let's talk through why, everyone. So our big why when it comes to this is use of diuretics in medical treatment of CHF can lead to losses in these following vitamins and minerals. Okay. Those vitamins and minerals would be these ones right here. We're going to have potassium, magnesium, thiamine, folate, riboflavin, and vitamin B12. Those will be the major things that a patient would lose with use of a diuretic. And remember, the diuretic is causing us to lose fluid in water. So that would cause us to lose some potassium, definitely, because the potassium will follow that. We would lose sodium naturally through that process. And then a lot of those water soluble vitamins that you're seeing here, like thiamine, folate, riboflavin, and B12, are also being lost in that process too. So, what do you think RDs to be? You think this was a nice, solid, easy one to start out with? Is there any confusion? And if there is, let me know in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk us through those diuretics there too. As I wait for you all to drop something in the chat, just kind of remember here too that I just said diuretics in general for this question, right? So if I specified a particular diuretics, maybe it was like a potassium sparing diuretic, well, we might have a different story in this case. So with this just saying diuretics, we're using this as like a catch all for all of them, as you can kind of see there. Okay, good. Good, Veronica. I'm glad that your confidence is feeling good there. You're like, yeah, medication one right off the bat, I got. That's good. I like that. All right, perfect. Since we're all feeling pretty good on this question, let's go ahead and keep our time rolling here. Let's pull up our next question here. Number 2. Which of the following foods are allowed for those with celiac disease? Would that be A, malt based coffee beverages, B, seitan stir fry, C, buckwheat with tofu, or a D, a sandwich on rye bread? What would be your best answer for that? Take 30 to 45 seconds to explore that. Good. I see some answers rolling into the chat here. Just take your time a little bit and make sure you check and you're like, hey, this feels like my absolute best answer there. A reminder, folks, if you haven't, we want you just to join that mailing list. I'm going to post that in the YouTube chat here for us. So that's going to be helpful if you want to get PDFs of these questions later or you want to get some of the knowledge. I'm going to be posting that in the chat here once I figure it out. Good. Okay. Let's see if that works. All right, perfect. So I'm going to start approaching this myself here too. So when it comes to this here, for this question, A, B, C, and D. For malt based coffee beverage, again, I'm looking for the gluten free diet. When it's someone who has celiac disease, we need to make sure that they pursue a gluten free diet. Malt based coffee beverages, if I think back on, does it contain wheat and gluten? Yes, in fact, it does. I believe those malt based coffee beverages would have that malt has gluten in it. And so I'm going to rule out answer A because that would not be permissible for a gluten free diet or someone with celiac disease. B, seitan stir fry. Okay, maybe I don't know about seitan very much, but when I think back, seitan does contain wheat, and so that also would not be permissible for a gluten free diet. I'm going to rule that one out as well. C, buckwheat with tofu. Buckwheat. Well, it says wheat in it, right? Okay. Maybe I'm a little questionable on that one. Does it have wheat? Does it not have wheat? Answer D is a sandwich on rye bread. And what I definitely know about a sandwich with rye bread is rye is going to be considered gluten containing. So I know if I'm stuck between C and D, there's one thing I know about D, and that's what I need to rely on. And for D, I know that rye bread has wheat, has gluten, so I know D cannot be the answer. That leaves me with answer C as my best fit for this question right here. And it, in fact, is for this one here. Buckwheat is a tricky food because buckwheat does not contain wheat or gluten inside of it, but it has the word wheat in it, which seems just so crazy to me that it has wheat in it, but it doesn't actually have it as a product. So it says buckwheat, but buckwheat does not contain wheat. So, to break down each of these answers, the malt based coffee beverages, those would be made with gluten and wheat. So, those would not be permissible. Seitan, Priscilla, you asked about this. Yes, seitan is also going to have wheat. It's made of wheat protein as well. And then D, a sandwich on rye bread. We know that's going to be a wheat product. So let's review our list of these gluten containing grains. If you want on your own, I recommend checking out some of your different grains that are gluten free. But here's your gluten containing grains. We're going to have things like wheat and malt, bulgur, barley, rye, couscous, farro, kamut, semolina, and triticale. Those would be some of your really common items that are going to be gluten or wheat containing there. So those are going to be those gluten containing products that you would have to avoid when it comes to celiac disease. Good. Excellent. What do we think Artie's to be? What questions do we have on there? Okay, so Chantel mentioned I've been adding to my list of gluten free. Yep, very good there, Chantel. Awesome. Awesome job. Kind of building up your gluten free list, or maybe it's a good idea to go to the grocery store and take a look and say, all right, well, in the gluten free section of the store, what are those actual products that are there too? Good. Good, good, good. Other questions in the chat that I missed here? I don't see any coming up here, so we must all be feeling pretty good. There we go. Good. All right, looking good, everyone. So make sure you just have that nice list in your head of those different gluten containing grains and then have some gluten free ones in your back pocket too. Number 3, the theory Y management theory illustrates that A, an employee must be controlled and coerced into completing work. B, employees lack self motivation to complete tasks. C, autocratic leadership is ideal for employee management. Or D, employees intrinsically enjoy their job and do not require close supervision. Okay, see some answers roll into the chat, but remember, you're going to have that full about 60 seconds to 90 seconds to approach that practice question for the CDR exam. So make sure if you really jump to one thing, take a pause, take a breath, and say, all right, is this my best answer by far? Okay. All right, so I'm going to start diving into this on my own here. A, B, C, and D. Theory Y management theory illustrates that A, the employee must be controlled and coerced into completing work. Now, this kind of feels more like theory X. We have theory X and we have theory Y. Theory X, I kind of think of like kind of X, like a little bit aggressive type of a thing as being theory X. And theory X tends to be what I would call more autocratic, more authoritative type of a thing, whereas theory Y tends to be more passive or democratic, I would say. So when it comes to A, employees must be controlled and coerced into completing work. I don't think that fits very well with theory Y. I think it fits much better with theory X. So I'm going to go ahead and rule that one out right off the bat. I don't think that's going to be a good fit. B, employees lack self motivation to complete tasks. Once again, this feels to me like something that's more theory X related. And so I would go ahead and I would rule that one out because I don't think it's going to be associated with what we see for theory Y. C, autocratic leadership is ideal for employee management. Okay, maybe I just want to put a little question mark by that. And D, employees intrinsically enjoy their job and do not require close supervision. I think D is going to be our best fit to fit with theory Y in this case. This is going to be the best fit when it comes to that. As Chantel said in the chat here, Z is equal to employee engagement, tends to be much more of a positive thing. And so with this, I would say let's go with answer D as our best fit. Theory Y management theory illustrates that employees intrinsically enjoy their job and do not require close supervision. That is going to be our best answer for this one. Let's zoom in just a little bit to this and let's talk through a bit of theory X versus theory Y. Theory X, I usually think of as being kind of like I said, a bit aggressive, and we go against that there. Um, so a question in the chat, which answer would be best associated with theory X? That's a really great question there. Um, and actually, A, B, and C, those would all be associated with theory X, and answer D would be the only one associated with theory Y. So with theory X, it kind of assumes the following. It assumes that employees are unambitious and they need direction. They limit creativity and they're not motivated to do their job. That's what the assumption is of this, is that really they don't like work. They're not going to work unless we push them. That's the assumptions of theory X there. Theory Y is a bit of the opposite. It's the thought process that employees love work. They'll come in, they'll do their work. You don't have to be on top of them all the time. They'll get their job done. You just have to let them kind of do their thing. Now, we know probably it's somewhere in the middle between these two because not everyone loves their job and is intrinsically motivated by it. But again, these are the assumptions of theory X and Y, is saying that on theory X, employees hate work, need to be forced, need to be coerced. And theory Y means they love their job. You don't have to do much effort in that case there. And this is coming from management, obviously, in this case. So management is where you're going to find this type of material. So currently in like domain 3, but of course, things can change a little bit there too. What other questions do we have to drop into the chat? Did this feel like one that was pretty self-explanatory? Is there some questions you might have about it? Let me know in the chat, and I'm happy to talk more about theory X and theory Y. Good. Little trips, oh my gosh, tricks for your exam day. Remember, like theory Y is good, theory X, bad, negative. That's what I always think of with that. And that'll help you a lot more there. Yeah, Laura Ann, theory Z can be a little bit challenging to talk to, but I'll certainly do my best. I've always known this as being like it's like a Japanese management, or OICHI as it might have been known there. And what this is under the assumption is it's kind of independent of theory X and Y. It's almost like its own theory. But what seems like this tries to focus on is very much that of like a Japanese cultural values, which is that the employees seem to have more involvement and investment in the company that they work for instead of treating it like a job. And that's what theory is Z is assuming, is saying that employees are focused, that they want to do good work. And so we're able to motivate them and keep them doing their good work because they believe in the work, they believe in the job, they want to do a good job, they feel invested in it. That's what Theory Z focuses on. Whereas Theory Y is almost more of a passive sense of that, to say, hey, employees, you don't need to watch them at all. They'll get the job done. And Theory X is the opposite, right? So Theory Z, I've always thought of it as being more like, hey, employees are invested in this company. They're invested in doing good work. And so that they will do good work because of that. Great question, Lorianne. Good. All right. Let's do another question. Number 4 here. A procurement manager has submitted their purchase order to the vendor. What is the next step in the procurement receiving process? A, submit purchase requisition to food service manager. B, Check the invoice compared to purchase order. C, sign the invoice and put the product away. Or D, check the purchase order compared to the purchase requisition. Once again, take 30, 45 seconds to work through this a little bit. All right, looking good, everyone. I'm going to start in on this question myself here. I'm going to wait. I'm going to give you all just a few more seconds just to get your answers into the chat for this one here. Good. Okay, see some answers rolling in a little bit. We all might not be as familiar with this topic as we are many other topics. Still a good one for us to go through, of course. Okay. So a procurement manager has submitted the purchase order to the vendor. What is the next step in the procurement receiving process? Okay, so A, B, C, and D. A, submit a purchase requisition to the food service manager. Why I would maybe want to rule this one out. I want us to all think about ruling this one out first. And that's because really here's where we're at this point. I have all this food I want to get, and I've sent it to the vendor and said, hey, this is the food I want. I want you to deliver it to me. That's what I'm doing right now, right? So, with that, if I'm going to go to A, if I was to submit a purchase requisition to my food service manager, that would have been something I would have done before I even did the purchase order. So I would have done that before I even did the purchase order. So to me, I'm going to rule out answer A because I really am past this step by this point. Submitting something to my food service manager doesn't do much at all at this point. B, check the invoice compared to the purchase order. So, what that means is I'm taking the invoice of the products that they delivered to me and I'm comparing it to my purchase order. And I'm saying, okay, so on my purchase order, I asked for 10 cases of chicken breasts. And on the invoice, you billed me for 9. So, I'm comparing the things on there. Or if they sent the invoice and let's say they say, hey, we sent you 10 cases of chicken breasts, but I look at the things and I say, there's not 10 cases of chicken breasts there. That's another way I'm doing that. I feel like B is a good fit because it would fit after I have submitted the order to the vendor. So I'm going to hold on to B for right now. C, sign the invoice and put the product away. That's a maybe, but it feels just a touch premature. It feels a little bit premature to go ahead and sign the invoice and put the product away because I don't even know if I got the product that I needed. I'm going to rule out answer C here. And D, check the purchase order compared to the purchase requisition. Maybe a little question mark for that one, but if I'm stuck between B and D, to me, I just felt better with B as in boy in general, that I would check the invoice compared to the purchase order, check what I ordered compared to what they're invoicing me. I feel like B is going to be my best fit. And if I have a 50-50 shot, I got to go with what my best fit is. And I'm going to go with B in that case. Okay, so B is going to be our best answer when it comes to this one, folks. I didn't see us saying a lot in the chat, so I feel like a few of us, we might be just a touch rusty on this topic. So let's talk about it together a little more. I've got this little form here to talk about the purchasing process, and I thought we could just walk through this a little bit here first and explain these. So, with the purchasing process, yeah, we're going to talk through all of these questions right here. That's a great one there, Alyssa. So, starting with the first step here, we would submit a requisition form to our manager. So if I'm a procurement person who orders all the food for a restaurant or a dining center or a hospital, you name it, what I do first is I'm going to take the requisition form and I'm going to give it to my food service manager. What I'm saying is, hey, boss, this is all the stuff that I want to order. This is all the things I want to order. So maybe it's the 10 cases of chicken breast and 10 cases of pasta, perhaps. They give me the approval then to say, yes, you're good to go to order those things. Then I complete a purchase order and send it to the vendor or the supplier. And the purchase order is saying, hey, vendor or supplier, this is what I want. I want 10 cases of chicken breasts and 10 cases of pasta. So I send that out to them. Then they come and bring me the invoice. When they deliver the products to me, they're going to bring the invoice to me. And the invoice is saying all the stuff they billed us for or everything that they delivered in that process. So, what I'm doing next is I'm going to compare the purchase order to the invoice. I'm going to say, all right, I ordered the 10 cases, but you brought me nine, for instance. So, I'm saying, here's what I ordered from you, and here's what you brought me. Next, I'm going to inspect the items against the invoice. If you tell me you brought me 10 cases of intact chicken breasts, well, I'm going to check them and make sure there's no ripped bags, there's no freezer marks, there's no bugs or anything like that in there, because I'm not going to pay for that product if it's not good. Then I would accept or reject those items and then sign the invoice and put that stuff away at that point. So this is just a nice little process of requisition to the purchasing process here. Good. So, Alyssa, related to your question, what's the difference between a requisition and procurement? So, procurement is procuring the foods, getting the foods to us. Requisition is like requisition. So I talked through this. Submitting a requisition form is like telling my manager, "Hey, this is what I want to end up ordering." In that case, good question there. Yep, Lorian, so you're correct. The invoice is coming when the products come. Submitting the purchase order is part of the ordering process. Yep, you're absolutely correct there, Laura Ann. But what I'm kind of emphasizing here is no matter what, whether it says the receiving process or the ordering process, your next step would have had to have been checking the invoice compared to the purchase order. If I've already submitted a purchase order to the vendor, we're past that process, right? We're on to ordering and delivering. So that's why I emphasize if I've already submitted my purchase order to the vendor, the only natural next step is they're going to deliver the products in the invoice to me. So that would make B my best fit in that case. Good. Okay, what other questions do we have? Do we all feel maybe a touch rusty on that topic a little bit? For those of us that don't work in food service, well, you probably never see this type of topic when you're doing it. I work in food service every day, so this is kind of naturally what I see. But keeping in mind, food service management is not going to be the majority of the exam. So if you feel a little anxious about that, remember, it's not going to be a majority of the exam. You just need to know enough to get these questions right. Okay. Seems like we're all ready for our next question here, so let's use that time nice and effectively. Yep, Veronica, I felt rusty, but now I understand this general process. And again, I'm just going to emphasize to all of you when you have this purchasing process here, one thing that you're looking at here is you don't need to know what's step 2. You don't need to know what's step 5. That's not necessary. What the exam is going to say is what is your first step? What is your last step? What is your next step? It's not going to make you say what is the second step. You just have to understand where we are now and then where we need to move through here too. Cool. Awesome, Lorian. Lorian worked in the library. I don't know why I always think, but someday I would love to just work in a library and just hang out with books all day and it's quiet and it smells like books. It kind of seems like the kind of a dream job. So maybe in another life, I would have went into like library studies. Okay. I've got another question ready for you all here. A food service dietitian notices that the roasted asparagus with lemon juice has degraded to an olive brown color. This is most likely due to A, excessive acid causing degradation of chlorophyll to pheophytin, B, excessive heat causing degradation of chlorophyll to pheophytin, C, excessive base causing conversion of chlorophyll to chlorophyllin, or D, excessive acid causing degradation of chlorophyll to chlorophyllin. That's a wordy one, but go ahead and take your 30 seconds or so to start on this question, and then I'm going to dive in and join you here. See a couple answers in the chat. Make sure you're eliminating the ones that you know are not going to be a good fit. Get those out of there. That way you don't get any confusion. Okay. All right, I'm going to start diving in here on my own. Food service dietitian notices that the roasted asparagus with lemon juice has degraded to an olive brown color. This is most likely due to what? A, B, C, or D? So with A, excessive acid causing degradation of chlorophyll to pheophytin. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about that. So I know that when chlorophyll comes into exposure to certain compounds, it can turn into this olive brown color. That's what we saw here in the question. Now, that olive brown tone or that compound that it converts to is known as pheophytin. So here's what I know that at the end of this, pheophytin is what it becomes. That's what I can remember from my studies, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to A. B, excessive heat causing degradation of chlorophyll to pheophytin. Hmm. Well, I know pheophytin is still in the running, so I'm going to hold on to B for right now. C, excessive base causing conversion of chlorophyll to chlorophyllin. Well, what I've just talked about is I believe pheophytin is going to be the big hitter here. That's what I believe it's going to convert to based on my knowledge here. I'm going to rule out C for right now. And I'm going to do the same for D because it's saying excessive acid causing degradation of chlorophyll to chlorophyllin. Okay, so if you're with me here so far, we have answer A and answer B. Excessive acid causing the degradation of chlorophyll to pheophytin, or excessive heat causing it. I think it could be either, but to be honest, when I look at it, the fact that we added lemon juice, which is quite acidic, makes me think that maybe we put too much lemon juice on it and perhaps it converted that roasted asparagus to this olive brown color. To me, I feel like answer A is going to be my best fit for this one. But let's see how we all did. And answer A is going to be our best fit. So now we're talking about some of those phytochemicals, we're talking about some of the pigments of these different fruits and vegetables. This is going to all fall into that food science type knowledge. So let's talk through that here, folks. Chlorophyll, like a green spinach that you see down there. You see it kind of looks like a normal green, if you can kind of tell there. So, what happens is that chlorophyll, when it comes into exposure to acid or excessive heat, chlorophyll converts to a compound called pheophytin. So when chlorophyll comes into contact with acid and heat, it degrades to a olive brown color called pheophytin. I always think of it as pheophytin. It's fighting off acid and fighting off heat. That's what I always think of there. And I want you all to think back too. Think back to like school lunch when you were growing up. Like I went to public school and they always had canned green beans. Canned green beans were like, I don't know, they used them all the time and they always tasted the same. But here's what I can tell you. When those canned green beans sat on that cooking line for several meal periods, how did they look after they'd been sitting there a long time? They looked gross, right? The chlorophyll in those green beans, after being sitting over heat for so long, degraded to this olive brown color. And that's why your green beans look really rough, is because when they've been sitting there under excessive heat for a long period of time, or they've come into contact with acid like vinegar or lemon juice, they're going to change and degrade into theophytin. And I want to see questions in the chat here, folks, because I want to help you all out with this, especially if you got it wrong. Let me help you out. The other side is chlorophyll, when it comes into contact with a base of some kind, like my rough image of baking soda here, it actually brightens up. So I know I saw us in the chat here thinking that the acid brights it up. I understand why you thought that. Maybe like bleach, for instance, might make you think that way. But however, it is the opposite. So when you add baking soda, a base, it brightens up and it actually makes your fruits and vegetables very bright and vibrant. It turns into chlorophyllin, is what the compound is known as. And when I think chlorophyllin, I think it's chillin' like a villain. That's what I think of. So they're dressed in a bright green suit, bright green hat. They've got that base on there. They're basic, so they've got all these bright clothes on. So I think chlorophyll, baking soda is chillin' like a villain in that case. So, related to your question here, Priscilla, you asked, can you explain again why it's not B? That's a great question, Priscilla. B would have been my next answer, probably. But what I wanted to emphasize in the question is because we added lemon juice and we heated it. I understand that too. We were heating it. But my thought is that if I added lemon juice, which is an acid, the lemon juice is likely that thing that is causing it to degrade into theophytin. Just roasting it maybe wouldn't do it too much, but if I roasted it and put acid on it, it's going to degrade into that theophytin, that olive brown color that we see through there. So B would be my backup answer, but A to me for this would feel like my best answer. Good. Okay, so Alyssa, it seems like you have that straight now, that you remember that a base creates bright color. Good, Alyssa. So B base, B bright. Bright in base. Bright in base. Very good. So that will make it nice and bright. Yeah, so a question in the chat. So the key to this question I'd look at is the lemon juice. I would look at that, or I would look at excessive amounts of heat. But really, what I wanted to emphasize with this question is if I do add acid, that needs to make your mind kind of trigger a little bit. You need to bump in and think, okay, acid is going to cause chlorophyll to become theophytin. So, my kind of goal with this question was to say, all right, well, are we recognizing the fact that acid coming into contact with chlorophyll turns it into this olive brown theophytin color? Really great questions in the chat, everyone. This is helpful for me, and it's going to be helpful to you so we can all leave this session with greater understanding. Other questions in the chat. I just want to leave a little bit more time, especially with these challenging ones. Okay, seems like we're doing good. Let me know in the chat though, do we all feel a little bit better after doing this question? Because that's my goal. If you feel even 1% or even a 0.5% better on it, then I did my job and you should be feeling better on it there too. Good deal. Let's go on to another question together and let's simplify stuff a little bit. A smoothie that contains one small apple, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 1/2 cup of cooked oatmeal, and 1 cup of milk would contain blank grams of carbohydrates. This is going to be kind of a carb counting slash figuring out the grams of carbs in this. My recommendation is just try to do your best, okay? Don't think too much about it. Go with what your gut kind of feels like here. It's 16, 17 great artists to be in the chat here with us. I love it. Excuse me. All right, folks, so let's start in on this a little bit together here. I see some answers rolling into the chat here. Now, I want to kind of work through each of these. What I'm thinking here is I want you to all think back a bit to carb counting. And it takes a little bit of memory trick and then some kind of tricks to get there too. But when it comes to carb counting, one carb count is equal to, say it with me, 15 grams of carbohydrates. Okay, so 15 grams of carbohydrates is what that equals to for one carb count. Now, I'm looking at all these items here and I'm trying to see which ones contain carbs. So to me, if I was to look at these, I'd say my small apple certainly has carbs. The peanut butter, I'm not going to really consider that as having a lot of carbs, to be honest. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, maybe it'll have like what, maybe 5 grams of carbs at the most, but even that feels too high. I don't think peanut butter is going to have it. It's mostly fats and protein. So to me, I'm not going to consider the peanut butter for right now. I don't think it's going to have a lot in it. The oatmeal, the 1/2 cup of oatmeal, and then 1 cup of milk. So let's focus on these three that I have here in yellow. One apple that's small, smaller than my fist even, would have how many grams of carbohydrates? I believe it would be one carb count. So one small apple to me would be equal to 15 grams of carbohydrates. Cooked oatmeal. Well, now we're getting down to our carb counts and to see what we all remember and what we all know for these, right? So if you recall, a cooked grain, and I have a podcast episode on this, not to plug that, but I have talked about carb counting before. Oatmeal, cooked cereal, cooked grains like that, 1/2 cup is equal to one carb count. So to me, this will also be 15 grams of carbohydrates here. Lastly, 1 cup of milk is also known as one carb count. Now, I don't think it has exactly 15 grams of carbohydrates. I think it has a little bit lower. But for diabetes carb counting, it's always still been considered one carb count. It just has about, from what I remember, about 12 grams of carbs instead of 15. But it's that close here, folks. It's that close. So I'm going to add up 15 plus 15 plus 12. So in this best answer, I believe my best answer is going to be 42 grams of carbohydrates as being my best fit for a smoothie with one small apple, 2 tablespoons peanut butter, a 1/2 cup of cooked oatmeal, and 1 cup of milk. To me, I feel like that's going to be my best fit for this one here. And let me know what you think in the chat if you agree or you disagree. So, just to kind of reiterate here, for carb counts, you need to make sure you have those different values and volumes and amounts in your head and nice and figured out there. So, the small apple, small piece of fruit, small pear, those are all going to be equal to one carb count, which is going to be 15 grams of carbohydrates there, always. For the cooked oatmeal, those cooked grains there, that's going to be equal to 15 grams of carbohydrates for that one. If I gave you 1 cup of cooked oatmeal, that of course would be 2 carb counts, or it'd be 30 grams. But in this case, 1/2 cup would be 1 carb count. And in the cup of milk, whether you did 15 grams or 12 grams, it doesn't matter really to me. And I don't think it's going to matter on exam day either. I put 12 grams to be nice and literal, but if, pardon me, if one of these answers here was 45 grams instead of 42 grams, that would also probably be a very good fit as well. And the exam is not going to give you 40, 41 grams, 42 grams, 45 grams. That's not going to be how they do that. They're going to try to give you dramatic differences like you see here. So when we add all those up, 42 grams of carbohydrates is going to be this here. Yes, so Lorianne, we are saying the exact same thing. You got it. 1 cup of milk is always still considered 1 carb count. That is absolutely accurate. What I will challenge though, go to your milk in the fridge. Hopefully it's in the fridge, and look. And every time if you look at milk, whether it's whole milk or 2% or skim, it's always 12 grams of carbs per cup. Every single time, always. Unless it's chocolate milk or milk with some added sugar, perhaps. But almost always, if you look, 1 cup of milk is actually 12 grams of carbohydrates. So I wanted to be a little literal here. But you are right, Laura Ann. I could have said 15 here, and we are all just as accurate when it comes to that. So Ava asked, random question, will they ask about very lean proteins on the exam or just lean proteins? I would say first, focus on your carb counting information first when it goes to there. So make sure you just know the carb counting first. And then if you want to expand it to low protein, medium protein, I'm sorry, low fat proteins, medium fat proteins, and high fat proteins, you should be good there. Ava, I don't think they're going to do very leans, but they might do a lean protein to you a little bit. Oh, so Veronica, does peanut butter have seven grams of carbs for two? Does it? Okay, gotcha. I don't doubt you there. I'm gonna have to go check my peanut butter after this and see. It felt like though, here's what I will say. Peanut butter never is gonna be considered for carb counting. Really never is. Because we know in diabetes carb counting, we're talking about things that are actually dense in carbohydrates, and peanut butter is not. Peanut butter is going to be a protein, so make sure we just keep that nice and straight in our head, that we know which foods are going to be associated with that there. Yeah, you're right. It does have carbs in it. But even still, I would say 42 will be our best answer when it comes to that. Yep. So even if peanut butter has carbs, it's not considered a carb count. Never will be, ever. So we'll just keep that off of the list there. Cool. Good. Other questions that we have in the chat here? All right. Looking good here, folks. We're going to go a few minutes over. So if you feel like sticking around with us, please do. I might pick up our pace a little bit just to make sure we all get some good rest tonight. For number 7, what is the ideal body weight for a 5 foot 11-inch female with an amputation of the forearm and hand? Okay, so here's where it's nice and cut off here. What is the ideal body weight for a 5'11" female with an amputation of the forearm and hand? We'll do 2 more questions here tonight. This one and one more. All right. So let's see if we all remember how we're going to calculate that ideal body weight. If you're still doing that, continue figuring out that ideal body weight. But I do want to talk through the formula just to help all of us get started should we need that. So for ideal body weight of a female, it starts out at 100 pounds plus 5 pounds for every inch over 5 foot. So we start always at 100 pounds, and then you're going to add 5 pounds for every inch that they are above 5 foot. So let's do 100 pounds plus 5 pounds. And because they're 11 inches over 5 foot, I'm going to do 5 pounds times 11. Okay. My hope is for all of you is that you're able to get to that point with ideal body weight. The amputations that can come separate, but my big goal is that we're able to get to this point when it comes to these ideal body weight here. So 5 times 11 for order of operations, we would have 55 pounds plus 100 pounds would be 155 pounds. So that is their ideal body weight. However, because they have an amputation, we need to do some work here a little bit. So here's one thing I would say, folks. Let's say you were here on exam day and you got your 155 pounds, but you didn't know how to get your amputation. Well, you obviously know it's going to be an ideal body weight that is less than 155 pounds. So you already have a clue in the answers here about what the best fit is. But an amputation of the arm and the hand would require a percentage change or percent decrease of 2.3%. 2.3% for arm and hand. I should say forearm and hand. So what we'll do to approach this is we'll take 155 pounds and I'm going to multiply it by that percentage. So in this case, I've got to move that decimal place over 2 points. So really my percentage would be 0.023. So that's when I'm going, okay, now I'm going to use my calculator to help me out because I cannot do that math in my head. And it looks like it's about 3 point, let's just say 6 pounds, okay? So meaning that arm and hand weighs about 3.6 pounds of that 155. So now what we need to do is subtract that. We're going to do 155 pounds minus 3.6 pounds. And when I do that, I end up with 151.4 pounds, or I'll just call that 151 pounds. And D will be our best fit when it comes to this one right here. So what I've mapped out here on YouTube is just kind of showing you the actual breakdown of the formula and a nice clean look as far as how those amputations go. For tonight, we're not going to talk through every amputation and every percentage out there. I want you to study that on your own and make sure you understand it. But just to help you out a little bit, as Ave said in the chat here, the full arm, my full arm, if I lose my full arm at the shoulder, that's 5%. My trick, I know this might not make sense to anyone, but my trick for that is I go, well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs, and one limb is about 5%. I know that doesn't make the most sense, but I always go 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs. Okay, let's just call it 5% because it's close to 4. So that's my little trick of remembering the full arm. Now, what do you do from here for the forearm in the hand? Well, the forearm and the hand make up about half of my whole arm, right? So if I cut that 5% in half, that's about 2.5% or 2.3%. So that's always been my trick of remembering an amputation is saying, okay, well, what's the total of losing the limb? And then if I lost half the limb, I pretty much cut that amount in half, is what I'm going to do there. And that's what I did in this case to get our 2.3%. So we found that ideal body weight of 155 pounds. We multiplied it by that 0.023 or the 2.3%. And that's how we got that poundage of 3.57, which I just subtracted from the total there. Good. Good, good. What questions do we have in the chat? Especially for a calculation and an amputation one. I definitely want to see if I can help you all out. Did you feel like you all understood this pretty well, what the goal was and how to get there? Or what part did you struggle with and do you need some assistance with? Let me know. Okay, pretty quiet in the chat. I'm going to keep an eye out for stuff just for a minute or two here. Good. All right. Doing good. So let's move on to one more to finish our night. Just another little food service one as we go through, and we'll wrap this up here. Just as a reminder, just so I don't forget, um, join the mailing list if you haven't. I'll make sure that it's posted in the description of this video. So if I don't get it figured out in the chat here, join the mailing list so you can get a PDF of these practice questions. That way you can come back to them if you'd like to. Like and subscribe to the podcast, please. Comment, let me know how I'm doing. Let me know how I'm not doing so well on. I'm happy to hear that too. But again, just try to give back as much as you can and spread the word to other studying students so that they can take advantage of some other free resources too. Number 8, an inventory control method that classifies products according to their value would be A, par rate, B, ABC inventory, C, perpetual inventory, or D, mini max. I already see some answers rolling into the chat. I'm going to give everyone still about 30 seconds just to work through this thing. Good. I see answers rolling into the chat here. We're doing good. All right, let's start out on this question then. A, B, C, and D using our process of elimination to pick out our best answer for this one here. So, for inventory control that classifies products according to their value for a par rate, well, a par rate doesn't do that necessarily. A par rate is much more focused on looking at things like having a designated par or a number that I set for a product, and then making sure when I go to order food that I am, so to say, filling my par is always how I've put it. To me, a par rate doesn't seem like it's really going to be focusing much on anything as far as like a valuation of things. It seems like it's just more a number that I want to reach. So I'm going to rule out answer A. I don't think that's going to be a good fit for this one here. B, our ABC inventory. This feels like a good one because ABC is being used to really figure out, all right, well, some certain items are going to be categorized as A or B or C. And we do that according to their value. So I think B is going to be a pretty decent answer for this. I'm going to hold on to that one. C, a perpetual inventory. So a perpetual inventory is going to be an inventory that's almost like continuous. where it's almost continuously when I use up an item, I can then see, well, how much of that did I use up and how much do I have left? So that's my best way to kind of use that type of piece there. So I don't think it's going to be answer C in that case. And D, mini max. Mini max is going to be like a range that we're using. So a high range and a low range of what I need to use to order things up at that point. While it's going to be a great way to go through things, I do not think it's going to be a control method that's going to classify products. So I'm going to rule out answer D in this case. And I would say B, I agree with many of you. That's going to be your best fit for this one here. So let's talk through these four just to end our night here. A par rate, as I said, that's a designated number that you put for an item. So I always call it like filling your par. That's always kind of been my, I don't know, other people's ways of doing it is saying, I have a designated par for an item. And then what I can do is let's say if my par is 10, when I go to order products, I can then go and say, all right, if I have 5 right now, I need to order 5 to fill my par. ABC inventory, that's going to classify your products as A being your highest value, B being medium value, and C being your lowest value items. So that's a form of control there where it's saying, all right, well, you can change the valuation of your items. And that way you know how much money you have in your A items, your B items, and your C items there. Perpetual inventory, as I said, this is going to be a method that we use here to kind of use a continual method. So it purchases and issues continuously or recorded for each product in storage, making the balance in stock available at all times. What's nice about this is I should be able to always check in and say, all right, well, what is the number of cases that I have of chicken right now? I should always be able to check that out. And last one, D, our Minimax tool for controlling inventory by using a lower and upper limit. So basically, I want to stay within that range as we go through things right there. Right. Okay. Perfect, everyone. So we're well past the top of the hour. I very much enjoyed having all of you in here. You great RDs to be to join us during this session. Remember, we're going to do these about every 2 weeks or so, continuing to try to do the podcast every week. So make sure you're just following me on all social media that you would like to rate, review, subscribe. Like I said, come back and watch these lives. They are going to be posted in the YouTube channel. So they're there for free. You might as well use them up as much as you can. Reach out to me over social media should you have questions, concerns, suggestions. And as always, happy studying to you, RD to be. I'll see you on the